In ancient times, there was a sage who was greatly respected by the king. The sage would always advise the king, "My king, do good to those who do good. The evil a person does is punishment enough for them." One day, one of the king's viziers, who was envious of the sage, complained to the king, "My king, that sage is saying that your breath smells bad." The king, doubting the vizier's words, asked, "How can I believe your words are true?" The envious vizier replied, "Call the sage to your side. If he covers his nose when he gets close to you, it will prove my words." Then this envious vizier invited the sage to dine with him before meeting the king and served him food with garlic. The sage, despite noticing the garlic smell, respected the invitation and ate the food. After some time, the sage went to see the king. The king asked him to come closer, remembering the garlic smell. The sage covered his mouth with his hand as he approached the king. The king concluded that the vizier's words were true. The king wrote a letter that said, "Behead the bearer of this letter," sealed it, and handed it to the sage. The king instructed the sage to deliver the letter to the chief vizier and to receive a reward from him as the sage was on his way. He encountered the envious vizier. The sage mentioned that he was on his way to deliver the letter and receive a reward as per the king's command. Point 14. Hearing about the reward, the vizier pleaded with the sage to let him deliver the letter instead. The vizier insisted, "If you give me the letter, I will deliver it and get the reward for you." So the sage handed over the letter to him. Thus, the envious vizier, who delivered the letter, ended up losing his head. The sage, as usual, returned to the king. The king, surprised to see him, asked, "What did you do with the letter?" The sage replied, "As I was delivering it, one of your viziers asked me to give him the letter, so I did." The king said, "Yesterday, that vizier told me that you were saying my breath smells bad. Is that true?" The sage answered, "I never said such a thing." The king then asked, "Why did you cover your mouth when you approached me yesterday?" The sage explained that the vizier had invited him to eat and served him food with garlic. He covered his mouth to avoid disturbing the king with the garlic smell. The king, understanding the sage's words, remembered his advice. The king acknowledged the sage's wisdom. "Your advice was correct." The envious vizier faced the consequences of his own actions. The king reaffirmed his respect for the sage. The sage's integrity and fairness became a lesson for the king and his court. The story highlighted the destructive nature of envy and slander. The king took the sage's advice to heart. The king began to value justice and integrity in his rule. The king's trust in the sage grew stronger. The sage continued to assist the king with his wisdom and counsel. The king, heeding the sage's advice, focused on fairness and righteousness in governance. The sage's integrity became an example for others in the court. The king embraced the sage as a close friend and confidant. The fate of the envious vizier served as a warning to others. The court learned the importance of valuing honesty and fairness. The king earned the trust of his people through just and righteous rule. The sage's wisdom and counsel ensured peace and stability in the kingdom. This story illustrates that justice and integrity always prevail.